I never thought I would find myself in such a terrifying situation. It was an ordinary evening, and I was returning home after a long, exhausting day. The house was just like it always was, quiet and familiar. But as soon as I stepped through the door, I felt something was wrong. The air in the house had an odd, unsettling feeling, as if someone had been here before me. At first, I thought I was just imagining things, but then I noticed a few unusual details. The kitchen cabinet door was slightly ajar, the chair in the living room was out of place, and most notably, there were faint sounds coming from upstairs, even though I was sure no one was home. My heart started racing. I tried to reassure myself that maybe the wind had shifted the furniture, or that I had left the cabinet door open before leaving. But then another sound rang out, this time clearer. It was the creak of the wooden floor. Someone was upstairs. Fear immediately overwhelmed me. I quietly backed away, trying not to make a sound. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone and called 911. I tried to speak softly, whispering to the operator that there was a stranger in my house. The operator told me to get out immediately and wait for the police to arrive. I rushed outside, my heart pounding. Just a few minutes later, police cars appeared. 2 officers got out, drew their guns, and entered the house. I stood outside, holding my breath, waiting. A moment later, I heard shouting and the sound of hurried footsteps. One of the officers escorted a man out of the house. He looked panicked and angry. They handcuffed him and took him to the patrol car. I was stunned when I realized the intruder had been in my house the entire time without my knowledge. But the most terrifying part was yet to come. When the police searched more thoroughly, they discovered a knife hidden under the pillow in my parents' bedroom. After the police restrained and took the unknown man to the patrol car, I still couldn't calm down. I stood frozen in front of the house, feeling as if my legs had no strength left. The police asked me to wait outside while they continued to search the house. Every second felt like an eternity, and I couldn't stop thinking about what had just happened. One of the officers came out and asked if I recognized the intruder. I shook my head, confirming that I had never seen him before. The officer paused for a moment, then said that he might have been watching me for a long time, waiting for the right opportunity to sneak in. That comment made me shiver. The thought that someone could have been watching me every day without my knowledge made me feel incredibly uneasy. The police then proceeded to search each room in the house. When they reached my parents' bedroom, one of the officers suddenly called out loudly, "We found this!" I hurried upstairs, my heart racing. When I entered the room, I saw they were holding a sharp knife. It had been hidden under the pillow. I could hardly believe my eyes. He had been in the house long enough to plan an attack on someone. But who? Me or my parents? Panic took over me. I tried to stammer and ask the police how he got into the house. They checked the windows and found a small pane of glass at the back had been pried open. This proved that he had broken in a long time ago, possibly hours before I returned home. As the police took him away, one of them turned to me and said, "You're lucky. If you hadn't noticed something was wrong and called us in time, things could have been much worse." I shivered at the thought. If I hadn't heard the noise upstairs, if I had told myself it was just my imagination, I might have faced a horrifying nightmare. That night, I couldn't bring myself to sleep in my own house anymore. After the police took the intruder away, I still couldn't calm down. Fear and confusion overwhelmed me. Who was he? Why did he break into my house? I decided to go to the police station the next morning to learn more. When I arrived, an officer recognized me and led me into the interrogation room. He pulled up a chair and sat across from me, his expression more serious than ever. "We've investigated his identity," he said, then handed me a file. My heart raced as I saw the photo of the strange man from last night. He had a terrifying face with hollow, lifeless eyes. The officer continued, "His name is Daniel Myers. He's been arrested for multiple thefts and violent acts, but what's even more frightening is..." He hesitated for a moment before continuing, "He used to live in your house." I was stunned. "What?" He nodded. His family owned that house more than 20 years ago. However, after a horrific incident, his entire family disappeared, leaving him alone to wander. He's been arrested multiple times for trying to return to that house. A chill ran down my spine. I remembered the times I felt like I was being watched in the house. the strange noises at night, and even the objects I thought I had misplaced but had been moved. The officer looked at me seriously. "We believe he had snuck into your house several times before without you knowing." Those words took my breath away. How close had he been to me? Had he been watching me every night in the darkness? I couldn't imagine what would have happened if I hadn't discovered him yesterday. After the conversation, I decided to leave that house forever. I couldn't live in a place that had once been the domain of such a dangerous person. Even though it had been the house I'd lived in for many years, now it was nothing but a place full of terrifying memories. After learning about the dark past of the house I was living in, I began to connect the strange events that had happened before. I always had the feeling that someone was watching me, even though I lived alone. Sometimes I'd notice objects moved in inexplicable ways. At first, I thought I was just being absent-minded, but now I realize the truth is much more terrifying. I remember one night not long ago when I woke up in the middle of the night after hearing soft footsteps in the hallway. I checked the entire house, but found no one. At that time, I reassured myself that it was just the wind or some animal. But what if there had truly been someone in my house at that moment? Had he been watching me for a long time? The more I thought about it, the more panicked I became. I decided to check the security cameras I had installed a few months ago but had never reviewed. When I opened the footage, my heart seemed to stop. In the video, on nights when I was deep asleep, a shadow appeared right outside my bedroom door. It stood there, silently staring at the door, then quietly disappeared into the darkness. I realized that the intruder that night hadn't just entered my house once. He had been there many times. I just didn't know. The feeling of fear overwhelmed me. I could no longer consider this just an isolated incident. I immediately called the police, sent them the footage, and told them I would be leaving the house right away. As I packed my things, I realized that I had been living in a real nightmare without even knowing it. From the beginning, I hadn't been living alone as I thought. And the most terrifying thing was, if I hadn't woken up that night in time, would I still be alive to tell this story? After sending the video to the police, I immediately left the house. I couldn't bear to spend another night in the place I once thought was safe. While the police conducted their investigation, I stayed at a friend's house, but the feeling of unease still haunted me. Who was the person standing outside my door every night? What did he want? And most importantly, how could he come and go from my house without leaving a trace? A few days later, the police contacted me to inform me of the initial results of their investigation. They found signs that someone had broken into my house multiple times. He didn't break down doors or windows, meaning he might have had a key or discovered a secret entry point I had never known about. This sent a chill down my spine. But the most horrifying discovery was yet to come. When the police checked the basement area, a place I rarely visited, they found a small hidden passage behind a wooden partition. This passage led to a secret room filled with strange items, old clothes, sleeping bags, canned food, and even photos of me taken from various angles around the house. He had been living there, right below me, for how long? The police also found a journal with scribbled notes, seemingly the ramblings of the intruder. Some pages detailed my exact schedule, when I went to bed, when I left the house, and even the phone calls I had made. I shuddered when I realized that all along I hadn't been alone. I had been watched every second, every minute, right in my own home. Finally, the police identified the intruder. He was a man who had lived there years ago and had become obsessed with the house. He couldn't accept the fact that someone else was living there, and instead of leaving, he chose to hide, living in the shadows, watching me every day. Knowing the truth, I felt more terrified than ever. I couldn't believe that all this time I had been living with a stranger without knowing it. I decided that I would never return to that place again. To me, that house was no longer a home. It was a horrifying nightmare. After the police arrested the intruder, I thought everything was over. But I was wrong. The memories of sleepless nights, the feeling of being watched, and the image of the dark figure standing outside my door still haunt me every day. Even though I had moved to a new apartment with a more secure security system, I still couldn't sleep soundly. Every night, I would startle at the smallest sounds, the wind whistling through the window, the floorboards creaking, or even the footsteps of the neighbors next door. I always felt like someone was watching me, silently observing my every move. Although I knew it was just fear in my mind, I couldn't stop it from taking over my thoughts. I began to have nightmares every night. In my dreams, I found myself still living in the old house, trapped with the intruder and unable to escape. He stood there, right in front of my door, just as he had so many times before. But this time, he didn't just stand still. He started moving toward me, slowly but steadily. I tried to scream, tried to run, but my body felt frozen, unable to move. And then, when he was only a few steps away, I jolted awake, cold sweat pouring down, my heart racing. These haunting memories began to take their toll on me. I couldn't focus on work. I couldn't enjoy life as I once did. I felt like I was trapped in a never-ending cycle with no way out. I decided to seek help from a psychologist to face my fears. The doctor said that I was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, a common consequence after horrific events. The recovery process wasn't easy, but I knew I couldn't let fear control my life forever. I began learning how to face the haunting memories step by step. I didn't want to live in fear anymore. I wanted to take back my life to find the peace I had lost. But I knew that some memories would never fade away. One evening, as I sat in the living room, immersed in the soft glow of the desk lamp and listening to gentle music, I felt like something was wrong. All the familiar sounds of the house seemed to be different. The ticking of the clock, the gentle breeze blowing through the window, everything became too quiet, too still. A sense of unease washed over me, preventing me from feeling at ease. Just a few minutes later, I heard a strange sound from outside the window. It was a small noise, like a soft tap on the glass, but enough to make my heart skip a beat. At first, I thought it might be some animal or just the wind blowing in. However, the anxiety within me couldn't be extinguished. I slowly walked to the window and gently pulled back the curtain. Everything outside was as dark as night. Nothing unusual, no one there. I turned back, thinking it might just be my imagination, but as soon as I turned, I heard another sound. This time, it was a creaking noise, as though someone was moving down the hallway. The feeling of fear hit me so strongly that I couldn't sit still, my heart pounding. I carefully walked toward the door, gently turning the doorknob to check. The door was locked tight, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was standing outside. Although I had thoroughly checked the house and found nothing, I couldn't get rid of the sensation that someone was hiding in the house. I returned to my bed, unable to sleep. Every sound, every faint creak of the window or the wind blowing made me jump awake. I could clearly feel that someone was watching me. This feeling haunted me every night, to the point where I couldn't continue living in the house. I started to wonder if it was the old intruder returning, or if someone else wanted to harm me. This sense of unease had destroyed my life. But what scared me the most was not knowing if that person had truly left or if they were still lurking somewhere, waiting for the chance to return. After sleepless nights, when every sound became terrifying and the shadows seemed heavier, I decided I had to uncover the cause behind these strange occurrences. Was this house really haunted, or was there something else that made me feel this way? Determined to get to the bottom of it, I began researching the history of the house. I went to the local library to look for information about the house and the surrounding area. After hours of searching, I came across some old stories told by locals. The house I was living in once belonged to a large family, but in the 1950s, they experienced a tragedy. One of the family members died in a mysterious accident, and since then, many people had claimed to hear faint cries at night. However, these stories were just rumors, and there was no concrete evidence to support them. My next decision was to invite a team of supernatural experts to investigate the house. One night, they brought specialized equipment like audio recorders, infrared cameras, and electromagnetic field meters. After a few hours of investigation, they told me they had recorded some strange sounds that couldn't be explained. One of the experts mentioned that it could be a sign of a spirit's presence, or perhaps it was energy waves from the surrounding environment. After hearing the experts' explanations, I became even more unsettled. Could there really be a spirit lingering in this house? Or was it just my mind reacting to the ghost stories I had heard? Although the answer wasn't clear, I couldn't shake the eerie feeling that overcame me every time night fell. This house remained a mystery that I couldn't yet unravel. After sleepless nights and haunting experiences, I decided to confront my fear and delve deeper into the strange phenomena occurring in this house. The odd noises, the feeling of being watched, and the oppressive darkness constantly disturbed my mind. Despite trying to find logical explanations for everything happening, each night brought new experiences, making me feel like I couldn't continue living in this fear. One night, when the creaking of the window and footsteps on the roof echoed again, I began to feel the presence of someone. The unexplained sounds forced me to jump out of bed, my heart racing uncontrollably. Although I knew no one could be in the house at that moment, the fear still lingered. Even though I had checked the windows and doors all locked tightly, the sensation that someone was still inside the house never disappeared. I decided I couldn't live in this state any longer, so I sought help from experts in supernatural phenomena. They came with special equipment like audio recorders, infrared cameras, and electromagnetic field meters to investigate the house. After a night of surveying, the team of experts said they had recorded some strange signals, but they couldn't clearly determine whether it was a sign of a spirit's presence or just environmental influences. One of the experts explained that the house could be affected by energy from the past, and the unexplained signs could be due to horrific events that had occurred before. However, this still didn't bring me any comfort. Although I couldn't provide a definite answer about what was happening in the house, I knew that the sense of unease would never leave me each time night fell. This house remained a mystery that I couldn't explain, and I was left to live with that fear. Things began to get even stranger in the following nights. Every time I thought I had understood everything, new mysterious phenomena occurred, making me feel even more unsettled. I tried to stay calm and find logical explanations for everything, but it seemed there was no convincing answer. Small sounds like knocking on the door, pulling the curtains, or footsteps continued to echo, preventing me from getting any rest. One evening, while I was sitting in the living room, I suddenly heard a faint knock from the window at the back of the house. At first, I thought it might be a small animal or the wind moving things in the yard. However, when I looked through the window, I saw nothing but the dark shadows of the garden. I felt an odd presence, as if someone were standing there, waiting for something. This sense of fear didn't stop. One night, as I lay in bed and was about to drift off to sleep, I heard strange noises coming from downstairs. It felt like someone was walking around the house, even though I was sure I had locked the doors and no one else was there. I couldn't take it any longer, so I decided to go outside to check. As I descended the stairs, I felt an eerie, cold atmosphere enveloping the house. Everything seemed terrifyingly silent. I approached the front door and peered through the crack, but saw nothing except the darkness. This silence made me feel like I was being watched. I opened the door and stepped outside, hoping to find a reasonable explanation, but there was no one but me in the yard. The next morning, I went back to check all the doors, windows, and areas inside the house. Everything was locked tightly, and there were no signs of any break-ins. I called a few friends and told them about what had happened, but they couldn't explain it either. The unease still clung to me like a shadow, never leaving. These occurrences forced me to face an unexplainable reality. Perhaps I wasn't alone in this house after all. Things became even stranger when these feelings of unease didn't only occur at night, but also throughout the day. At first, I only sensed some kind of presence when night fell, but gradually the feeling that someone was watching me, standing right behind me, became more evident whenever I was alone in the house. The entire room always felt like it had an invisible figure lingering in it, and even though I turned around to look, I never saw anyone. One day, while I was in my office, I felt something like someone standing outside the door, just waiting for me to turn around. This sensation truly sent chills down my spine, and I couldn't resist the urge to look back to check. But when I peered through the crack in the door, there was no one there. However, the anxiety still clung to me. The feeling of being watched from behind kept me from focusing on my work. Sometimes, I even felt a sudden rush of cold air brushing against my face. These phenomena didn't stop at just feelings. Once, when I had stepped out of the house for a while and returned, I noticed that items in the room had been disturbed. Some things like books, papers, or cups neatly placed on the table had been moved, even though I didn't remember doing it. This made me feel like I was losing control, that some unseen force was acting on the space around me, and I couldn't explain it. As time went on, I became more and more fearful, unable to understand why these things were happening. Every time I went outside, it felt like someone was following me. And when I returned home, it seemed like someone was secretly standing behind me, watching my every move. This not only made me anxious, but also unsettled me about the very house I was living in. Eventually, I began to realize that these sensations might not just be in my imagination. Something real was likely happening in this house. The unexplained phenomena and the vague presence left me feeling uneasy. This situation kept dragging on, causing me to slowly lose the sense of safety in my own space.